Afternoon, adventurers. At level 11, Artificers get a feature called Spell Storing Item that lets you store a spell of first or second level in an item that you can use as a spellcasting focus, and cast that spell a number of times during the day, equal to double your intelligence modifier. That's a lot of casts. And, even better, you can pass the item to other people so they can cast it as well. Now, since I have 3 Artificers in Adventurers League that are level 10, I figure it's time to take a deep dive and take a look at these spells that are available, and see which ones are best. When we include the first and second level spells that are available to the different subclasses of Artificer, we have a total of 50 spells. So let's not waste any time getting into it. First, let's look at damage spells, because those should be pretty easy to compare to each other. And keep in mind as we go through these, at level 11 our cantrips are going to scale up to 3 dice. That means something like a firebolt will deal 3d10, a lot of other cantrips will deal 3d8, so we have those to compare with as well. Catapult, for starters, deals that 3d8, although you do get to try again if you can line up multiple creatures and the first one succeeds their save. And there's an argument for launching things like Alchemist Fire, Holy Water, Acid, etc. You also have to ask yourself if roughly 25 gold pieces per shot is going to be worth it for that use. Unlike basically all cantrips, Tasha's Caustic Brew is an area of effect spell and can hit multiple targets, so that's useful. If we're talking about essentially replacing our cantrip with one of these damaging spell-storing spells, AoEs are pretty much the way to go. Heat Metal is also a great choice against creatures wearing metal armor. It gives disadvantage on a bunch of stuff in addition to the fire damage, of course. Alchemists get Ray of Sickness, but it does less damage than cantrips are going to do at this level, and poison is a very commonly resisted damage type. Alchemists also get access to Flaming Sphere, which is a lot better, but the 2d6 damage it deals is not going to hold up terribly well at these levels. Up to you, but it wouldn't be my first pick. Alchemists also get Melf's Acid Arrow, which is better than cantrips in that it does more damage, and it also can force 2 concentration saving throws all on its own. If you hit an enemy spellcaster with it, they have to make that save right away, and also again at the end of their turn when they take 2d4 more acid damage. Armorers get Magic Missile, and that's never a miss, but it also doesn't deal terribly high damage at tier 3, so Armorers and Artillerists both get Thunderwave and Shatter, which are also AoEs and therefore good picks to spam round after round. Personally, I'd favor Shatter, of course, as it's more damage. Thunderwave you have to be very close, although it could be fun to spam Thunderwave and launch creatures all over the map. And Artillerists also get access to Scorching Ray, which is also more damage than cantrips are going to deal at this level, and it can target multiple creatures if you need it to. It also works great with things like Hex, Hexblade's Curse, and Spirit Shroud, which add damage to each of its 3 attacks. So if you're multiclassed or otherwise have those for some reason, Scorching Ray is a pretty good choice. Of course, not every spell you use in combat is going to be a damaging spell, so let's look now at some control and support type magics. Fairy Fire is a fantastic debuff for the enemy. They can't turn invisible and your whole team gets advantage on attack rolls against them. That's huge. I already spam this all the time on my characters that have it, so having 12 of them or 10 of them in one day is it's very good. False Life is one that I will say is not a good option, because the 1d4 plus 4 temporary hit points you get from it are not going to mean very much at all at level 11 and higher. It's just really not much. Enlarge Reduce is an interesting choice, given that you can debuff enemies or buff your allies with it. Each time you cast, you get to choose, and having 10-ish casts of it per day could be fun, if not maybe the strongest option on the list. Grease is amusing, and can be useful situationally to knock people prone, but at this level, it's probably not going to be your best pick. Blur is a very solid defense buff, giving enemies disadvantage on attacks against you, and being able to, if you have a moment, to pass the item around, put it on your entire party, could actually be very useful. Protection from Poison is situationally good, and given that, again, you can apply it to your entire party, if you know you're going to be in a swamp or somewhere where a lot of poison is, or fighting a green dragon, something like that, being able to make your whole party resistant is pretty great. But level 11 is also where some characters get Hero's Feast, which makes you fully immune to poison. So if there's someone who has that in your party, that's going to go a whole lot farther. Pyrotechnics is the magical equivalent to a smoke grenade or flashbang. So if you're into that kind of thing and you want to get a little bit of battlefield control that way, go for it. But you are going to have to deploy sources of fire into the battlefield. Web is very fun, and it has a large radius, and restraining enemies in the webbing is quite potent as a control effect, so I'd recommend this one. Also, you can use it to set up a little extra fire damage for your other party members, or even yourself on later rounds, if you want to. Armorers get Mirror Image, which, much like Blur, is a pretty sweet defensive buff, and if you can get it on multiple people in the time before a fight, great. Battlesmiths also get Heroism, but much like False Life, the temporary hit points you get from it aren't going to go very far in Tier 3. You're going to be taking a lot more than, 5 damage. It's nice damage mitigation, don't get me wrong, but there are better picks for sure. And Battlesmiths also get Warding Bond, which is going to be overkill. You should not need 10 casts of Warding Bond in one adventuring day for pretty much any reason. The one thing I will give this is that you can hand your spellstoring item to your Steel Protector as a Battlesmith, and have it cast the spell on you. And now when you take damage, it takes half the damage, and then after the fight you can use Mending to repair it. We all know adventuring is full of dangers, so sometimes your party is going to need healing magic. The Artificer can deliver that, and a spell-storing item is a fantastic way to do so. Cure Wounds, to use the most obvious example, is going to give your party a total of 10d8 plus 50 healing, assuming your intelligence is 20, over the course of the adventuring day. A lot of spell lists have lesser restoration on them, so to put it on a spell-storing item would probably be overkill. My favorite for healing and support magic is Aid, as a matter of fact, because of course it increases 3 creatures' maximum HP by 5, but more importantly for us, it's a 5-point heal to 3 creatures at a time, and you can do that 10 times. That is 150 points of healing. That's twice as much as a 6th level heal spell. You just have to divide it among 3 different people. Plus, if anyone in your party has Disciple of Life from a level at least of Life Cleric, you can hand the spell-storing item to them, and that'll nearly double the healing you get from Aid. It can also get 3 allied creatures up from 0 hit points at the same time, and not that many spells can do that. That's about it for the healing spells and for combat spells in general, and now let's move on to more of the utility casting. Detect Magic is also a ritual, so it would be overkill. It's nice to have once in a while to just cast immediately, but that's what spell slots are for. Disguise Self is an interesting one because you can disguise your entire party, kind of like a budget seeming spell. Jump is pretty cool, but again there are better ways to get your party across a gap or up a ledge or some such. Longstrider though, a 10-foot movement speed buff to everyone in your party for at least an hour a day, possibly 2 hours if your party is small enough and your int is high enough. Pretty good. Purify Food and Drink is also going to be overkill, unless you're eating 10 meals a day for some reason. Snare is neat if you're setting up an ambush. You could set up a whole bunch of traps for your enemy, but otherwise, or if you don't know that's coming, probably not worth taking for this. Alter Self is a rad spell, and very versatile, from giving your party swim speeds and water breathing, to +1 natural weapons for their unarmed strikes. Arcane Lock is super fun. Every door in a dungeon just becomes your door. Continual Flame rocks. Having a bunch of casts of a permanent effect is pretty freaking sweet. But this is probably better suited for the days between adventures. You don't really need to cast it while you're out fighting. Dark Vision you can cast on your whole party if you need to. Although in my experience, parties usually only have like 1 or 2, maybe 3 people that don't have Dark Vision, so the spell storing item would be overkill. Enhanceability is pretty sweet though. Being able to give people advantage on stuff. Granted, out of combat the help action exists, but sometimes the DM rules that you can't help with a thing, or maybe someone needs to go into an area alone for one reason or another, so being able to cast this spell on them beforehand and just throw it out willy-nilly a bunch of times during the adventure could actually be pretty awesome. Invisibility, much like Disguise Self and Longstrider, putting it on your whole party is going to be great. Now everyone is invisible, you can go about your business unseen, hopefully undetected depending on your stealth rolls. Levitate is pretty neat, but again 10 is way too many. Rope Trick is nice for taking short rests unperturbed, but unless you're taking 10 short rests in an adventuring day, you're not going to need this. You could use it to cheese every fight that you get into, if you want your DM to hate you. See Invisibility for the whole party would be pretty swell, but probably overkill. Having 1 or 2 people able to see invisible creatures is usually enough, but if you do find yourself in a fight with invisible creatures, it'd be great to have it on everyone. Skywrite is a ritual. It could be pretty funny, but you can get the same effect with enough time. And Spider Climb, again, transporting your party around, giving them extra ways to move about the environment is never a bad thing, but there are better ways than Spider Climb. Plus, in Tier 3, you may have some abilities and items that let you fly, or at least some of your party members will, so your mileage is probably going to vary on that one. And there we have it, all 50 Artificer spells, categorically classified as either useful or not in the context of having 10 of them for free each day. That was a ton of spells and a ton of info to run through real quick, so let's summarize our findings in a more concise manner, huh? There are a lot of good and really useful spells on the Artificer list, but it can be hard to justify having so many casts of a single one ready to go. The best picks for the spell storing item are going to be spells that we are going to use a lot of times per day. Invisibility, Longstrider, or Disguise Self on our whole party can be really useful for social interaction and stealth purposes, and just movement in general, in Longstrider's case. Being able to throw out Arcane Lock or Enhance Ability at will is going to be super fun and useful. Cure Wounds, Lesser Restoration, and Healing Word are great choices, but for me, Aid takes the cake when it comes to restoring HP. As it turns out, a lot of damage spells are subclass specific, so the choices there are going to vary depending on which one you choose. For an Alchemist, I'd go with Melf's Acid Arrow to proc those 2 concentration saving throws and deal some pretty decent damage. For an Armorer or Artillerist, I would go with Shatter for sure. Having a spammable 10-foot radius AoE thunder damage attack is amazing. Battlesmiths don't get extra damage spells of 1st and 2nd level, but they do have that interesting trick with Warding Bond. They can always grab Heat Metal or Tasha's Caustic Brew. So there we have it. Our best, subjective, spells to use for the 11th level Artificer spell storing item. Of course, every spell has its usefulness, and which one's going to be best for you is going to depend on your party and your campaign, and the things that happen in it. And the fact that we can change the spell every time we take a long rest is going to be huge for being prepared for the situations that we see coming. And it gives us the freedom to experiment with a lot of different spells, and if that's not just the most Artificer way to approach things, I don't know what is. Anyway, I've rambled long enough, I won't keep you any longer. Thanks for watching up to this point. If this helped you, drop a like. If it didn't help you, drop a like anyway, the algorithm loves it. Comment down below what your pick is for your Artificer and how that's going for you. I would love to hear from you, and happy adventuring. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.